Good morning, everybody. It is Mrs. Hawley, and I am back with you today. We are going to learn about ancient Rome, which is really exciting because it was such an important empire. So we're going to look at how geographic factors either encouraged or hindered, in other words, it hurt their expansion, and the interactions that people had within the Roman Empire. And we're going to talk about the contributions of the Golden Age of Rome. It's so exciting. The first thing I would like you to do on page 21 in your workbook, there is a smaller map. I think it would be a good idea for you to label your map. What I did first, because it does have the outline of the empire in your map, on your map. You see it goes into North Africa and all the way around Turkey, which is today Asia Minor, and up here. And then the Romans captured half of what is today Great Britain. They were not able to conquer Scotland, so half of Britain. So I would do that first. I would draw your outline surrounding the Roman Empire. So it should look, mine's kind of messy. I didn't take my time, but you could take your time and make it look nice. I added the names, and I used the old names that they used for their territory. So Britannia was what they called Britain. Germania were what would be the German states later. Gaul here, and Hispania, Spain, North Africa, Asia Minor, which is today called Turkey. This area right here was Pontus, and of course Italy, the Italian peninsula. And then I also labeled the water. So Atlantic Ocean is important. The Mediterranean Sea was incredibly important because you'll see their whole empire surrounds the Mediterranean Sea. Here we have the Red Sea, and up here the Black Sea. All right, so feel free to stop the video and fill in your map, please. Just hit play when you're done, and we'll look at the geography of Rome. All right, my friends, welcome back. Let's talk about the geography of Rome. Rome is located on the Italian peninsula. So it is a body of land that is surrounded on three sides by water, and it is surrounded by the Mediterranean Sea. So in fact, it juts out into the Mediterranean Sea. And the Italian peninsula had fewer mountains compared to, say, ancient Greece. Ancient Greece, remember, was very mountainous, and that interfered with their ability to unify. In ancient Greece, that's why the city-states developed in the first place, because there was no one unifying government in ancient Greece because of the mountains. Italy did not have that problem. The Roman Empire, on the Italian peninsula, where there were fewer mountains, it promoted unity. They were able to have one strong central government. Rome happened to be located on a very broad plain, so it's a large area of flat land that not only supported a growing population, but it did so because on this plain it was much easier to farm. Remember, in ancient Greece, it was not easy to farm because of the rocky soil and the mountains. They were able to grow lots of grapes and olives, but Rome was in a better situation because they had more areas on which to farm. The original Rome, the city, was built on these large 7 hills. And we'll see a little video. It talks about the 7 hills and how they united to form the original city of Rome. Rome's location in the Mediterranean Sea made it much easier for Rome to travel to areas like North Africa and Asia Minor in order to establish trade routes and to conquer territory. So it doesn't come as a surprise that they controlled all of the territory surrounding the Mediterranean Sea. Being able to sail around the Mediterranean is what allowed Rome to trade goods, technology, ideas. So there was a lot of cultural diffusion in the Roman Empire. A lot of cultural diffusion. Now, I did say there were fewer mountains, but there are two huge mountain ranges that protected Rome. The Alps were in northern Rome, and the Apennines in the east, on the east coast, which protected Rome from invasions. It was very hard to invade the Italian peninsula, at least from the east or the north. Okay, so now we're moving on to page 21 in your workbook. Oops, ignore that for now. So the legend says that Rome was founded in 753 BCE by Romulus and Remus, the twin sons of Mars, who is the god of war, the Roman god of war. And Romulus killed his brother Remus and then became the first king of Rome. All of the 6 kings following Romulus were elected by the Roman Senate. So Rome was ruled by kings from 753 BCE all the way until 509 BCE, when Rome became a republic. There's an interesting little story about Romulus and Remus on page 22 in your workbook. It's kind of interesting. It says, legend has it that Romulus and Remus, the twin sons of the Roman god of war, Mars, the king where the boy lived, feared that they would one day overthrow him, so he had put them in a basket and left them out on the Tiber River. And the legend is that a she-wolf rescued the boys and raised them. So that's a little legend behind Romulus and Remus, their story. So now let's talk about the Roman Republic. Okay, a republic is a form of government where citizens elect representatives to speak for them. Now, if you remember ancient Greece, the city-state of Athens turned into a direct democracy. A direct democracy is where all eligible citizens participate directly in government. In other words, they vote on every single issue and they debate on every issue. Well, that was fine for a city-state like Athens, but in Rome, there were way too many eligible citizens for them to all be able to vote on every single issue. So it made more sense for them to become a republic. So instead of all eligible citizens voting on every single issue, they instead chose representatives to speak for them in the government. So power was passed to 2 consuls who were selected every year. They served as commanders in the army. They led the Roman armies. There are 2 consuls. So they are kind of like our president, sort of. Not exactly, but sort of. Although they only served for 1 year. And the consuls were chosen from members of the Senate. The Roman Senate was 300 members made up of patricians, the wealthy male landowners in Rome. So to be in the Senate, you had to be free. You had to be an adult male born in Rome. You had to have land. And then the consuls were chosen from the Senate. So to be a consul, you had to have first served in the 300-member Senate. Magistrates were the judges. They are the ones who determined what the laws meant. They would hear court cases, and the magistrates were also chosen from the patrician class, those wealthy landowners. And then the Senate, as I talked about a second ago, was made up of 300 patricians. They served for life, and their job was to give advice to the magistrates and the consuls. So one thing you should already have noticed, that those who really had the most power in the Roman government were the wealthy patricians. All Roman citizens, whether they be patricians or plebeians, the plebeians were the common people. They were able to serve in the Roman assembly. And it was the job of the assembly to vote on laws, and they got to pick the patricians who would hold important jobs like the consuls. So even though to be a consul, you had to be a patrician and a member of the Senate, they didn't have to be chosen by the Senate. They were actually chosen by the plebeians in the assembly. So that did give them some power. Now, if we're looking at who were citizens in ancient Rome, and now we're on page 23 in your workbook, we're talking about only free men. Only free men who were part of the Republic were considered citizens. And we just said that it's the wealthy landowners, the patricians, who held the most important jobs. They are the ones who fought for Rome. They are the ones who paid the taxes, and they are the ones who helped rule the Roman Republic. The commoners, the plebeians, were ordinary freemen. They were farmers for the most part, and tradesmen, craftsmen. They made things. They could own land and slaves. They did fight for Rome, and they also paid taxes. Slaves were usually conquered in battle and brought back to the Republic. They had no rights, they had no power, they were under the control of their owners at all times. And women actually were able to hold the same status as their husbands. So if your husband was a patrician, you were a patrician. If your husband was a plebeian, you were a plebeian as a woman. And remember, plebeians and patricians were not allowed to marry each other. You could only marry within your social class. So back to women, yes, they held the status of their husbands, but they were not allowed to vote. They had no political power in Rome at all. The other people who lived in Rome were the legionnaires. They were the very elite top soldiers. They were over 17 years old. They had to have served for at least 25 years in the army. And once they were done with fighting in the Roman army, they could be given land and become landowners. So we are now on page 24 of your workbook. And here's a little information about the Roman soldiers. It says on page 24 that they were very well trained. They had to be able to march 24 miles in a day with their armor on and carrying their weapons. They were taught how to swim, to fight, and to build things. And they were completely disciplined. And they were not allowed to marry while they were serving in the military. So in some ways, they were similar to the Spartans, in some ways a little bit different. All right, let's talk about the laws of ancient Rome. The laws included all legal procedures, it included the rights of citizens, and it included property rights. And this would form the basis for future Roman law. These are the 12 tables of law. The 12 tables were created and then displayed in the Roman Forum, the Roman marketplace, where almost all of the government buildings were located. And that way, everyone would be able to see them, whether they were there to purchase things or there to serve in the government. And the 12 tables is what allowed the Roman government to consolidate its power. In other words, have it located in one place in Rome. And it allowed them to maintain their power by creating order and stability throughout the Republic. The 12 tables applied to everyone within the Republic. And I've given you some examples of the 12 tables down at the bottom of page 24, and you'll see that they covered all different kinds of areas of law. So for example, it says a space of 2.5 feet must be left between neighboring buildings. Here's another one. Should a tree on a neighbor's farm be bent, crooked by the wind and lean over your farm, you may take legal action for removal of that tree. How about this one? If the theft has been done by night and the owner kills the thief shall be held to be lawfully killed. That one doesn't make sense. That must be a typo. How about this one? A person who had been found guilty of giving false witness. So if you go to a trial and you testify against someone and you're lying, then you will be executed. They will throw you from the Tarpeian Rock. It was a law that putting to death of any man unconvicted of a crime is forbidden. So you cannot kill someone who has not been found guilty by a jury. So those are just a few examples of the 12 tables. Now what we're going to do is actually look at part of the 12 tables. We'll look at some of the other laws. Let's first look at a little review of the Roman Republic, and then we'll get back to the 12 tables.
Our teacher says our 12 tables of law.
Oops, I'm sorry. Let's try that again.
Are one of the greatest Roman accomplishments. This afternoon, we learned how they came about. Way back in the early days, the Patricians were in charge of the laws. They weren't written down, and a lot of things were decided in secret. Not only that, but many legal decisions seemed very unfair to the plebeians. So they insisted that the Patricians and the plebeians decide the laws together and write them down publicly for everyone to see. Then the Patricians just couldn't change the laws whenever they felt like it, and the criminals couldn't claim they didn't know they were breaking the law. Grandfather says the 12 tables made things clear for everybody.
All right, now let's just do a quick introduction to the 12 tables on page 25 in your workbook. And I'll read this out loud and you follow along, please. It says in 509 BCE, the Roman Republic was established in Italy. At first, the government was only made up of patricians, members of the land-holding upper class of Rome. Later, the farmers, merchants, artisans, and traders, known as plebeians, won the right to be elected to the government too. The plebeians demanded that all of the Roman laws be written down and displayed in public so all Romans would know the rules and the punishments for breaking them. As a result, around 450 BCE, the government had the laws inscribed on 12 stone tablets and placed in the Roman marketplace called the Forum. All right, so before we actually read some of the laws, what I'd like you to do is the pre-reading questions so that we can put the 12 tables into context. All right, so I'd like you to answer the questions on page 25. Who wrote the 12 tables? When were they written? Where were they written? Where were they displayed and why there? Who was the audience and why were they written? So you're going to stop the video right now and answer those questions and then press play and we'll review those. All right, welcome back, my friends. Let's put the 12 tables into context. So the first question is, who wrote the 12 tables? This one's a little vague. So it's okay if all you put is the Roman government wrote the 12 tables. Okay, it was probably the Roman Senate, but we don't know that. So we're just going to say the government in general. When were the 12 tables written? Well, hopefully you wrote that the 12 tables were written in 450 BCE. Remember, we always answer our questions using complete sentences, please. And again, you can stop the video at any time to fix your answers. But again, your answers don't have to be exactly the same as mine, word for word. The next question is, where were the 12 tables written? Where were they written? Well, the 12 tables were written in Rome, the city of Rome on the Italian peninsula. The next question is, where were they displayed and why that particular location? Hopefully you wrote that the 12 tables were displayed in the Roman Forum. And they were displayed there because that's where the people gathered. That is where the marketplace was. That is where most of the government buildings were. So people were moving around in the Forum all day long, every day. So that's why the 12 tables would be displayed there so that the majority of people would see them. Our next question is, who was the audience for the 12 tables? Who was supposed to be reading these laws? I said the 12 tables were written for all living in the Roman Empire to follow. So anyone living in their territory was the audience because they all had to follow the same law. And lastly, why were the 12 tables written? Hopefully, you had some of these. I said that the 12 tables were written to unify the empire, so to create unity, and to provide order and stability within the empire. This is one way that the Roman government was able to consolidate and maintain its power. Remember, we've spoken about this before, that one thing that rulers do whenever they gain a large territory, most rulers anyway, is they create a unified system of law. And yes, it does provide order and stability and unity, but it also allows the government to maintain its own power. All right, my friends, now what we're going to do is look at some different parts of the 12 tables. We're going to do some close reading. So obviously, I didn't choose to do all of the 12 tables because there was way too many of them. So I just picked a few that I thought were more interesting and told us a lot more about the 12 tables. So let's look at page 26 first. And we're going to talk about first laws of injury. All right. And this puts me in the mind of comparing it to the Code of Hammurabi, kind of similar. So let's look at laws of injury. It says, if one has maimed a limb and does not compromise with the injured person, let there be retaliation. In other words, someone breaks your arm, you can break theirs. So if one has broken a bone of a free man with his hand or with a cudgel, which is like a hammer, let him pay a penalty of 300 coins. If he has broken the bone of a slave, let him have 150 coins. So there's not corporal punishment here. We're not breaking other people's bones. We are paying a fine. And notice that the fine is higher if you injure a free man than if you injure a slave. If one is guilty of insult, the penalty shall be 25 coins. Wow. So you had to pay a fine if you insulted someone and the insult is false. All right, the next one. Any person who destroys by burning any building or heap of corn deposited alongside a house shall be bound, scourged, which means whipped, and put to death by burning at the stake, provided that he has committed the said misdeed with malice. He meant to do it. Aforethought, he planned it. But if he shall have committed it by accident, that is, by negligence, it is ordered that he repair the damage. Or if he be too poor to be competent for such punishment, he shall receive a lighter punishment. So if you destroy someone's building, someone's home, or their crops, and you did it on purpose and you planned to do it, then you will be arrested and whipped and burned to death. Not cool. So don't injure other people, destroy other people's property. If you did it by accident, however, you have to pay a fine. All right, let's look at it, number 12 here. If the theft, so now we're talking about theft. If theft has been done by night, if the owner kills the thief, The thief shall be held, oh, I know what this means. The thief shall be held to be lawfully killed. So if someone breaks into your home and it's nighttime and you come upon the burglar and you kill them, you're not going to get in trouble for it. It was a lawful killing. That's what that means. Number 13, it is unlawful for a thief to be killed by day unless he defends himself with a weapon. Even though he has come with a weapon, unless he shall use the weapon and fight back, you shall not kill him. And even if he resists, first call out so that someone may hear and come up. So if someone breaks into your home during the daytime, even if they're armed, you are not allowed to kill them. You have to try to restrain them or call for someone else to help you restrain the thief. But if they come into your home at night, you are allowed to kill them. Interesting. Number 23, a person who has been found guilty of giving false witness shall be hurled down from the Tarpeian rock. So if you lie in court about someone, you are put to death. Interesting. All right, now let's look at public law. And the first one is the definition of the term treason. He who shall have roused up a public enemy. So if you encourage a public enemy to go against the government, or if you hand over a citizen to a public enemy, you must suffer capital punishment. You will be put to death. So if you commit treason, you are punished by death. Okay, number 6, putting to death of any man whosoever might be unconvicted is forbidden. You cannot put someone to death if they haven't been found guilty in court. All right, now here's a supplement to the law. And this is on page 27. Marriages should not take place between plebeians and patricians. And then another supplement. If a slave have committed theft or done damage with his master's knowledge, the action for damages is in the slave's name. So if someone tells their slave to go destroy something, the slave is blamed. Interesting. All right, you've now got 3 questions to answer based on the reading. Question number 1 on page 27 says, what does this section from the 12 tables suggest about Roman society? And here's the section they're talking about. If one has broken a bone of a free man with his hand or with a cudgel, let him pay a penalty of 300 coins. If he has broken the bone of a slave, let him have 150 coins. So I'd like you to stop the video right now and answer that question, and then press play and we'll review your answer. Welcome back, my friends. We are talking about the 12 tables of law. I said that this section from the 12 tables tells us that Roman society was broken up into different classes which were treated differently. You can tell this because in the 12 tables, if you hurt a free man, the penalty, the fine that you have to pay, is much higher than if you hurt a slave. Slaves were not as valuable as free men. So if you injure a free man, the penalty is higher. That makes sense. Oh dear. All right, number 2. Treason is addressed in lines 19 and 20. So I want to know what the definition for treason is. So go ahead and stop the video, answer question 2, and then we'll press play to review this. All right, welcome back. Treason is defined as the act of riling up an enemy of the public or turning over a citizen to a public enemy. And you'll see question 3. I forgot to put in the animation, so I'm giving you a freebie, so you better write it down. So, according to the 12 tables, what was the punishment for treason and why? Well, if you remember, we talked about this already. The punishment for treason was death. Why do you think this is? Well, I said that the government is probably trying to prevent citizens from committing treason. You know, if you commit treason, then you'll be put to death. I think if I knew that was the crime, I wouldn't commit that particular crime, knowing that the punishment is death. That's my answer. All right. Let's go on to question number 4. All right. Let us go on to number 4 on page 28. So the question says, what does the law putting to death of any man whosoever he might be unconvicted is forbidden? From table, what is that, 9? Mean. So what does that mean? Putting to death of any man whosoever he might be unconvicted is forbidden. So stop the video, type a response, and then press play to review. All right, my friends, welcome back. I said that this means that in order to be put to death, you have to have been found guilty in a trial. And this would prevent innocent people from being put to death. Sounds about right. Number 5, what can you infer about Roman society based on the first law that says marriage should not take place between plebeians and patricians? So table 11, marriage should not take place between plebeians and patricians. What can you infer about Roman society? All right, so stop the video, type a response, and we'll go over it when you're ready. Are you ready? I'm ready. All right, I said one can infer that the patricians felt they were superior to the plebeians and didn't want the two social classes to mix. I thought that sounded about right. Again, your answer might be different, so just think about it. Could be perfectly perfect. Let's go on to number 6, the last one. Number 6, what does the 12 tables tell us about how the Romans used systems of law to consolidate, to bring together, and maintain their power? Okay, so what do the laws tell us about how the Romans used systems of law to bring together, to consolidate, and maintain their power? So you're going to stop the video, answer the question, and we will review it in a minute. All right, friends, welcome back. Okay, this is just what I said. Remember, your answers are going to be different. I said the 12 tables tells us that the Romans had a strong set of laws that told everyone how they were expected to behave and what the punishment for not following the laws were. These laws applied to the whole empire and therefore created a unified law that applied equally to everyone. So not only did it help the Romans maintain peace and order, but it helped them maintain their empire. I hope that makes sense. All right, we are going to move on now and talk about the expansion of the empire. So we're on page 29. Okay, and up at the top, there's a nice map that shows you the entirety of the Roman Empire at different times. And your notes, it says by 264 BCE, Rome fought and gained control of the entire Italian peninsula. And then Rome fought a series of wars called the Punic Wars with the powerful city-state of Carthage in North Africa. If you look at your map on page 29, Carthage is identified. It's got that little X's, the little X's in it, I believe. And the first two Punic Wars ended with Rome controlling Sicily, which was what they were fighting over anyway, the island of Sicily in the Mediterranean. And so the Roman army defeated the Carthaginians and gained control of Sicily and a good portion of Spain as well. Goodness, not really good about the movement here. Sorry about that. In the Third Punic War that they fought with Carthage, the Romans captured Carthage and they totally razed the city. And by razed, I don't mean they raised it up. I mean they destroyed it to the ground. And any survivors were sold into slavery. So they were showing the rest of the territory what would happen if you resisted the Roman Empire, if you resisted, surrender, and started their expansion into North Africa. So military conquests led to not only a growth of the Roman Empire, but it led to cultural growth also because they came in contact with the advanced cultures that places like Greece had already been fostering. So they did take over Greece, they did take over Asia Minor, and Greece had already long gone through their golden age. So the Romans are going to benefit from this by taking over those territories. Oh my gosh, sorry, that bothers me. Anyway, so growing this huge empire will lead to its actual downfall. It leads to internal structure or struggles, I don't know what that was, and violence. The gap between the rich and the poor will get bigger and bigger, and the government would become increasingly controlled by the wealthy. So a series of warlords will gain control of the Roman Republic, and that created quite a bit of instability in the Republic. So the Republic ends in 49 BCE. Gaius Julius Caesar, one of the Roman commanders of the military, violated Roman law and brought his troops into the city of Rome. He invaded, and he will declare himself dictator for life in 45 BCE. Julius Caesar. So that brought about the end of the Republic and the beginning of the famous emperors. So in 27 BCE, because Julius Caesar will be assassinated, Octavian, who takes the title Augustus, Octavian, I believe, is Julius Caesar's nephew. He takes the title of Augustus and declares himself the first emperor of Rome. And Augustus's rule will bring about an almost 200-year period of peace and prosperity known as the Pax Romana. It translates into Roman peace, which was a golden age of Rome. So Augustus comes in as emperor and begins this almost 200-year period of peace, during which time the empire is prosperous, they have a lot of money, so they are able to support a golden age. Now we're going to look at the Pax Romana, the golden age of Rome. So you're going to see a lot of achievements. So we'll start with arts and architecture. You will notice that a lot of Roman art and architecture is going to be inspired by the Greeks. So the Greeks are going to perfect columns that the Romans are going to perfect columns that the Greeks had originally created, and modify their domes and arches to create even better architecture. But if you see here, here's a Roman sculpture. They improved upon the sculpture made by the Greeks. Remember, the Greeks believed in portraying the perfect human form. Well, the Romans are going to expand on that and create the most beautiful, detailed sculptures. Just absolutely phenomenal. The Romans will build amphitheaters, such as the Colosseum, the Roman Colosseum. Absolutely phenomenal feat of architecture. It had a stage that could be raised and lowered. It could even, the floor of the Colosseum could be flooded. They used to have mock naval battles in the flooded Colosseum. No lie, I kid you not. They would raise the floor then, and they would hold chariot races in the Colosseum. They would have gladiators fighting each other to the death. All kinds of crazy stuff going on in that Colosseum. And as I mentioned a minute ago, the Romans blended classical Greek sculpture with more realism to create magnificent sculptures. Here we're going to talk about Roman literature and philosophy. Virgil is one of the most famous Roman poets. He wrote the Aeneid about the founding of Rome. Cicero, also a writer, wrote books about rhetoric. Do you remember rhetoric? Public speaking. He wrote about speeches. He wrote all kinds of philosophical and political writings. And this is one of his quotes: "The nobler a man, the harder it is for him to suspect inferiority in others." Now we're going to move on to page 31. Science, math, and technology. One of the most famous, there's two huge famous pieces of technology which involve science and math, actually. The first were the Roman aqueducts. The aqueducts were designed to carry water from the mountains to urban centers, even though they weren't near the mountains. So carried water to urban centers from faraway sources. And they used it for fountains, public fountains, and finally indoor plumbing in Europe. Indoor plumbing. Remember, we first learned about indoor plumbing in the ancient civilization of Mohenjo-Daro in ancient India in the Indus River Valley, thousands and thousands of years before the Roman Empire. And it took that long for Europeans to come up with ways to have indoor plumbing. One of the other huge achievements of the Romans were their roads. Over 74,000 miles of roads. And they were very straight and built really, really well. And they were used for a number of purposes. They made communication throughout the whole empire much easier. The Roman roads made trade much easier through the empire, and it was helped by the Roman army because the Roman army would patrol the roads and they would protect people moving around. They would protect trade, people bringing goods from place to place. So it was safe. The empire was a safe place to travel. So you're going to see more trade, which brings more money into the empire. The roads also enabled the military to move quickly from place to place within the empire to put down possible rebellions or invasions. So the Roman roads were incredibly important. All right, more science, math, and technology. Roman physicians were very influenced by the Greeks. An individual named Galen, he dissected apes and pigs. He used clinical observation of patients. So he didn't cut them open, but he observed their symptoms. He examined them and tried to find out reasons for illnesses. It was illegal within the Roman Empire to dissect human corpses. So they did use apes and other animals. Pigs have an internal organ system that is quite similar to humans. So they did use pigs to dissect. And other Roman physicians did secretly use the body of dead gladiators and criminals who had been hung as a way of learning about the human body. So now we've got some questions on page 31. The first question is, from where did the Romans get many of their ideas? So I would like you to pause the video and answer the question. That's an easy one. Just make it a complete sentence, please, and then press play to review. All right. I'm hoping you got this right, but the Romans got a lot of their ideas from the ancient Greeks. So they took a lot of Greek ideas and they improved upon them. And because I was so bad at the animation, you get this one for free. So how did the Roman roads help them gain, consolidate, and maintain their power? Well, we know the roads helped the Romans gain power because the Romans helped them take over new territory. It helped the Romans move their military around very quickly so they could take new territory, but it also helped them consolidate and maintain their power because they could use those roads to stop people within the empire from rebelling and stop outsiders from invading. Also helped the Romans build up their economy by using the roads for trade and having their soldiers protecting the roads to increase trade. Right, we are going to now move on to page 32, and we're really getting to the end of the Roman Empire now. So around 180 CE, the Golden Age comes to an end because there are a whole series of incompetent emperors who come to power and don't really know how to rule, and they don't rule well. 22 of these emperors will come to the throne during this short period of time between the end of Pax Romana and the end of the Golden Age. And if you look here at this chart, it tells you what ended their rule, why they died. And if you look, assassination, suicide, assassination, killed in battle, maybe plague, assassination, plague, assassination. So many of them were murdered by their own soldiers. And so that leads to a lot of instability. Another reason why the Roman Empire began to decline was continued attacks from outside tribes. The Romans called them barbarians. And if you look at the bottom of page 32 in your workbook, there's a map and it shows you the different invaders. There are the Huns and the Goths. You've got the Anglo-Saxons, you've got the Vandals, the Alans, the Visigoths, the Ostrogoths. So all kinds of different barbarian tribes attacking all throughout the empire. And there's no way that the military is going to be able to make it to all parts of those places to stop these invasions. So some military reasons why the empire failed were these Germanic invasions. So the Visigoths, Ostrogoths, the regular Goths, the Picts, the Scots, the Franks, the Vandals, and the Huns. That's one reason. Another reason why the military led to the decline of the empire is because by the end, the military was made up mostly of paid mercenaries. Mercenaries are soldiers who are paid to fight. They are not Roman. They were made up mostly of Germanic tribes, the same people that were trying to invade. So the Roman government thought that it might be a good idea, instead of having them invade the empire, why don't we pay them to protect the empire? Yeah, that didn't go very well. They lacked the training and they lacked the discipline. They had no loyalty to Rome. The only loyalty they had was to their own commanders. So not a good move on behalf of the Roman government. So those are military reasons. Some economic causes for the decline of the Roman Empire. The Roman government had to repeatedly increase taxes. And that was important because they needed to support the government. And a lot of these governments were very corrupt and used the money for their own benefit, and eventually fell upon the poor within the empire to pay the majority of the taxes, and they don't have the money to do that. So if they can't pay, then really no one's paying anymore. So there's no more money to support a military, no more money to pay for the government. Another economic cause, farmers fleeing their land. They are going to flee from the invaders and they're going to seek protection in the cities. Well, that's okay, I guess, but if they're not out there farming, where are the people in the cities going to get food from? That is a good question. So you're going to have riots in some of the cities because the people were starving. There just wasn't enough food coming in because there weren't enough people growing food anymore. You've got the disappearance of the middle class. Really, all that's left are the very wealthy and the very poor. There isn't really much in between, and the very wealthy are not going to be paying much in taxes, trust me. Another economic cause for the collapse of the empire was the Romans' continuing reliance on slave labor to do all the work and not relying on themselves to do the work. So that's another cause. Okay, let's look at political causes. A lot of people felt that the Roman government had become too strict, and they don't like it when that happens, so they will stop supporting the government. I had said the government was very corrupt, and a lot of people stopped supporting the government for that reason. One thing that ends up happening, look at the map on page 32 again. Everybody go back and look at the map on page 32 in your workbook. What you are going to see there, at the bottom, see a line? There's a straight dotted line that goes through the empire. And on the left side of the line, it says Western Roman Empire. And on the eastern side of the line, to the right of the line, it says Eastern Roman Empire. What ends up happening is the emperor, Constantine, believed that it would be easier to control the empire if it was split in two. And you have two emperors ruling, one in the west, one in the east. And by doing that, they inadvertently are going to leave the western half without money and without a solid tax base, so they don't have any way to get money. And if they don't have money, they can't pay the military, so very little protection. So the western half of the empire is going to be too weak to repel the invaders, and it will eventually collapse. Okay, look at some social causes for the collapse of the empire. We know that because of the invasions going on, and because you had many people living inside the cities now, the population will decrease. Many of the wealthy are going to become selfish and lazy. They're not going to be doing their part. In the cities, hunger and disease is then going to cause people to flee. So originally, people are fleeing to the cities, and now they're fleeing from the cities. So we've got a little interesting fact on the bottom of page 33. It says, in order to keep the people's minds off of their problems, like starvation, the Roman government offered them free entertainment in the Colosseum in Rome. Observers could witness gladiators fighting to the death, Christians being torn apart by wild animals, even mock sea battles where the floor would be flooded and mock ships would fight. The government would hand out bread, and they called these bread and circuses. Give the people bread so they're not hungry, and give them entertainment so they forget that they're miserable and starving. And the government thought that this would be a great way of preventing people from fleeing and preventing riots. Yeah, not terribly successful. Oh, and it was Emperor Diocletian, not Constantine, who split the empire. We'll talk about both of them in a sec. Okay, so those are social causes for the decline of the Roman Empire. All right, Diocletian is the one who splits the empire in half to make it more manageable. So Diocletian is going to choose to rule from the eastern part of the Roman Empire, while other emperors will rule the western half. Now, I know what you're thinking because I'm psychic. You're thinking, why would he pick the eastern half of the empire to rule? Well, it was actually quite brilliant on his part. Why rule the east? For a lot of reasons. Number one, the invasions that were going on in the West were not going on in the East. The East had more money. They had access to trade with Asia. They had access to trade through the Black Sea and the Mediterranean Sea. So money was pouring into the eastern half of the empire. That being said, the money could be used to support fortifications, to prevent invasions. They could be used to support military troops to protect the eastern half of the empire. So the eastern half of the empire was not only wealthy, but it was pretty safe. So Diocletian was actually really, really smart to move his headquarters to the eastern part of the empire. Now, Constantine comes to power, and his goal will be to reunify the former Roman Empire. And he starts this in 324 CE. He will move the capital of Rome to the Greek city of Byzantium, and he will call it Constantinople. Constantinople. You've heard that song. Okay, we are on page 34. In 325 CE, Constantine calls for the Council of Nicaea. And it's at this council that he makes Christianity the official religion of the empire. Constantine had been fighting, and he claimed that during a battle, he saw the image of a cross in the sky. And he said to God, if you let me win this battle, I will become Christian and I will make sure that the empire is Christian. And he did win that battle, and he did become Christian, and he made Christianity the official religion of the Roman Empire, despite the fact that Christians had been persecuted in the empire for a long time. Okay, so even though Constantine attempted to reunite the former Roman Empire, it split up after his death 30 years later. So the eastern half will become known as the Byzantine Empire, and it would remain intact for hundreds of years, while the western part of the Roman Empire will completely collapse. So in 476, a Germanic prince would win control of the Roman army and take over the city of Rome. He will declare himself king, and 476 CE is considered to be the date, the official date of the fall of Rome, even though in reality this was a very long process that took quite a while. But historians call 476 CE the official end of the Roman Empire. Okay, we are going to do a quick review of Greece and Rome. And when I say quick, I mean 3 questions. Oh, let's look at a video first. Okay, let's look at a video about the fall of Rome. It's pretty short.
In this tutorial, we will be examining a question that historians have debated for centuries. Why did the Roman Empire fall? At its height, the Roman Empire controlled the entire Mediterranean world, from Spain in the west to Britain in the north, all the way to Persia in the east. It encompassed over 2 million square miles of territory and over 60 million inhabitants. Roman technology had spread all over Europe, and Roman roads linked the entire empire with its economic, military, and cultural hub, the city of Rome itself. Rome didn't fall in a day, but over the course of more than 100 years, it slowly decayed and was unable to defend its empire. It did not crumble because of one reason, but rather a combination of reasons that took a toll on the empire's military strength and its economy over a long period of time. The traditional argument for the fall of the Roman Empire relies on the barbarian tribes that had begun invading Roman lands in the 4th century AD. The Huns invaded from the east, pushing the Germanic tribes like the Goths and Visigoths into Roman territory. The Roman armies were unable to deal with mass migration of barbarian tribes into their lands. In 410 AD, a Visigoth general even sacked the city of Rome itself. This is not the entire explanation, however. Rome was crumbling from within, not just from without. Severe corruption in the government, as well as unstable leadership, spelled disaster. A series of poor emperors led the empire to financial ruin. Some emperors were even assassinated in the chaos of civil war. Such an environment did not give the people hope in the government. Rapid military expansion and conquest was also expensive and depleted the empire's coffers. Wealthy citizens tried to get out of taxation. Eventually, the treasures of war and slaves dried up, and rapid inflation further weakened the economy. With such a lack of money, the empire was unable to field enough troops to protect its borders from barbarian incursions. In the 3rd century, the Emperor Diocletian divided the Roman Empire into 2 halves. While this made the empire easier to rule in the short term, in the long term, the 2 halves drifted apart. It made it more difficult for the western half to survive. They had to rely more and more on mercenaries to protect them, and these mercenaries had little to no loyalty to Rome. They only cared about getting paid. A combination of these internal and external pressures created a situation that even a strong leader would have had trouble dealing with, let alone corrupt and sometimes crazy emperors. One final factor dealt with religion. In the 1700s, the historian Edward Gibbon theorized that the spread of Christianity had also contributed to the fall of Rome. In the early days of Rome, the state religion celebrated Rome itself. The Roman gods symbolized civic virtue and the expectation of service and sacrifice in the name of Rome. Christianity spread a different set of virtues. Its followers were focused on the return of their Messiah and on preparing themselves for heaven after death. Many Christians questioned the emperor's divine status, and a belief in the glory of Rome gave way to a focus on the glory of God. Very simply, Christianity eroded the civic patriotism and loyalty that had helped Rome grow and expand for centuries. This process was finalized when the Emperor Constantine made Christianity the official religion of Rome. Explanations in history are never monocausal. That is, there is never only one explanation for a historical event. Life is more complicated than that. It's important to understand that though some causes have more impact than others, that is, the barbarian invasions and the taking of Rome, other causes can have a part too. Without corruption, financial difficulties, and a lack of civic virtue, Rome could have fielded larger armies that could have possibly defended its borders and properly protected the empire. Deciding which causes are most important is what historians constantly debate as they seek to unravel the past to find lessons for the future.
All right. that was good. Give you a little bit of a different perspective. Now, let's do the review. All right. So, on page 35, which was known as the birthplace of Republican government? Greece, Rome, or both? What do you think? I want you to stop the video and put a circle, make a shape, and make it transparent inside, and put it around what you think the right answer is, and then press play to review. Okay, my friends, which was known as the birthplace of Republican government. If you said Rome, you are correct. It's easy to remember. Greece, democracy, Rome, law. Greece, democracy, Rome, law. So Greece had a democratic government. Rome, with an R, had a Republican government. That's how I remember it. All right. Strong central government. Which had a strong central government? Greece, Rome, or both? So you're going to stop the video, copy your circle that you put around your last answer, and paste it onto which one you think is correct. And then press play and we'll check. All right, my friends. Which had a strong central government? Greece, Rome, or both? Rome did. Greece didn't. Remember, Greece never had a strong central government. They were divided by all of the mountains. So they never unified the way that Rome did. Rome, the city of, was located on that flat plain on Italy, and that allowed for a united, single, strong central government. Okay, last one. Size of the empire made it virtually impossible to rule. Is it Greece, Rome, or both? So press pause or stop, answer the question, and press play to review. Welcome back, friends. What do you think? Which empire was so large that it was almost impossible to rule? I hope you said Rome. If you said Rome, you are right. Rome, right. See? Good job. All right. You know what it's time for now. ACRQ. Yay, the constructed response questions. We love them. So, let's take a look at document 1. Oh, shocker. Document 1 is from the 12 tables of law. Cool. Let's look at these laws here. I just picked a few. So, number 1, a dreadfully deformed child shall be killed. Oh, that sounds a lot like the Spartans in Greece. The second one, if a father surrender his son for sale 3 times, the son shall be free. So if your father tries to sell you 3 times, you get to go free. I think I would have gotten the hint after the first time, but whatever. The third one, our ancestors saw fit that females, by reason of levity of disposition, shall remain in guardianship even when they have attained their majority. What does that mean? It means that throughout Roman history, women, because they are seen as the weaker sex, shall always be under someone else's thumb, whether they are under their father's home and under his orders or their husband's. This doesn't seem to say much for their view of women. The next one, if a man and woman live together for a year, they are considered married. The woman legally treated as the man's daughter. Yeah, that's kind of ooey. All right, the next one, if a person has maimed another's limb, let there be retaliation in kind. So have the same thing done to him, unless he agrees to make compensation with them. So unless you can pay a fine, you get your limb broken. The next one, if a patron shall defraud his client, he must be solemnly fortified. So if you commit fraud against someone, the punishment is death. The next one we've seen before, putting to death of any man who has not been convicted, whosoever he might be, is forbidden. Okay, second to last one here. Marriage shall not take place between a patrician and a plebeian. And then lastly, whatever the people, meaning the government, has ordained, has ordered, shall be held as binding by law. All right. So question 1 on page 36 asks you to explain how this document describes the power of the Roman Empire. All right, so I would like you to press stop, answer this question using information from the document, and then press play to review. Welcome back, my friends. So what'd you say? Here's what I said. I said, this excerpt from the 12 Tables of Rome describes the power of the Roman government as being absolute. The government decides which babies survive and which don't. The government describes how women were to be treated, and even who was allowed to marry and who was not allowed to marry. You may have said similar things. You may have put it differently. That's fine. As long as you bring up that the 12 tables gave Rome a lot of power, the government. All right, document 2 is from a man named Appian during the Mithridatic Wars, which was a set of 3 wars between Rome and the Persian kingdom of Pontus, which is on the Black Sea. I think I put it on your map at the beginning. So let's read what he has to say. Many times, Mithridates, king of Pontus, had over 400 ships of his own, 50,000 cavalry, and 250,000 infantry, with engines and arms in proportion. For allies, he had the king of Armenia and the princes of the Scythian tribes around Euxine and the Sea of Azov and beyond, as far as the Thracian Bosporus. He held communication with the leaders of the Roman civil wars, which were then fiercely raging, and with those who were inciting insurrections in Spain. So those supporting rebellion in Spain. He established friendly relations with the Gauls for the purpose of invading Italy. From Cilicia to the Pillars of Hercules, he also filled the sea with pirates who stopped all commerce and navigation between cities and caused severe famine for a long time. In short, he left nothing within the power of man undone or untried to start the greatest possible movement, extending from the Orient to the Occident, to vex, to irritate, so to speak, the whole world, which was warred upon, tangled in alliances, harassed by pirates, or vexed by the neighborhood of the warfare. Such and so diversified was this one war against Mithridates, but in the end it brought the greatest gain to the Romans, for it pushed the boundaries of their dominion from the setting of the sun to the river Euphrates. All right, so question number 2. Based on this excerpt, explain the purpose of Appian, the writer's description of the Mithridatic Wars. Why did he describe them like this? Stop the video, type a response, and then press play when you're ready to review. Go ahead. Okay, my friends, this is what I said. Again, your answer might be different. I said the purpose of Appian's description of the Mithridatic Wars was to show how, despite all of the advantages, the Roman army was still able to conquer Pontus and expand their empire. So even though Mithridates, the king of Pontus, had all these allies, had all this communication, had all of these pirates under his control, he had all these advantages, he still lost to the Roman Empire. All right. So lastly, we've got to do question number 3, which, if you remember, always relates documents 1 and 2 together. So this question is: identify and explain a cause and effect relationship associated with the historical developments in documents 1 and 2. Be sure to use evidence from both documents. So you look at documents 1 and document 2, and what is a cause and effect relationship? Do the events in document 1 support being the cause of document 2? Or do the events in document 2 seem to support being a cause of document 1? All right, so I would like you to turn the video off right now. You're going to reread the documents and answer this question. And then, once you're done answering, then press play and we will review. Okay, welcome back, my friends. So here we've got document 1, which is the 12 tables of law, and document 2, which is Appian's description of how the Romans defeated Pontus, the kingdom of, and we want to know a cause and effect relationship. So here's what I said. So I am basically going with document 2 being the cause of document 1. So I said, because the Romans expanded their empire, they needed to have a system of law to unify, consolidate, and maintain that empire. Document 2 describes how the Romans defeated the powerful kingdom of Pontus in the Mithridatic Wars, despite Pontus's cavalry, infantry, and their alliances. So because the Roman Empire was so successful in gaining territory like Pontus, they created the 12 tables of law to have control, to create order and stability. Okay, the 12 tables. And that the 12 tables included the power of the government, the great power of the government, the position of women as being inferior to men, and even could control who was allowed to marry whom. All right, You did it. We made it through ancient Rome. Whew, that was quite an accomplishment, I must say. All right, so we are done through page 38 in your workbook. So until next time, friends, I will talk to you soon.